What's the last year been like for you? What have you processed or come to realize in your father's passing that maybe you hadn't even when you had him on earth?
You know, people ask me that question, and it's crazy because being that he had Parkinson's for almost 35 years, I pretty much had prepared myself for the idea that he would pass at one time. And we're all going to pass at some point, right? But just with his health obviously declining as he got older, I had really gotten ready for it. But when it actually happened, it was crazy, you know, because it's like, wow, he's no longer here. And just with the history and everything that we know about him, it's like I prepared myself for my father being a part of history and no longer being here for us. And really, I just always think about how we want to preserve his legacy. But I mean, it's never easy, obviously, waking up and not having him here to be able to call and to hug and to kiss and to smell him and, you know, all of that. But it gives us comfort in knowing that he's in a better place now. So, I mean, like I said, it wasn't like it happened suddenly. So it gave us a little bit of, you know, I guess it made it a little easier.
Yeah, I saw you smiling at some of the photos that we had here in the background. What was going through your mind as you're looking at him holding you as a baby and you being next to him? What were you thinking?
My father and I were so much alike, but we were also very different. And I'm the youngest girl out of, you know, his 7 girls. And my father and I used to bump heads a lot. So I was just remembering, you know, some of the conversations that we had. You know, I remember when I moved out the house, 18, moving in with a boyfriend. He had a problem with that. You know,
You did?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We got into it, and it was like, look, I
fast.
Yeah, I was real
sin.
fast. Okay. And I was like, you know, I pay my bills. You don't pay my bills. You know, you're not gonna come judging me. And we went through all of that. And I wasn't Muslim. He was. That was a big issue. You know, his youngest daughter telling him at like 9 years old or whatever age I was, like, I don't want to be Muslim. And that was a problem. And then when I wanted to start boxing, you know, he was just like, he didn't want me to do it, didn't believe women should fight. And I did it anyway. And then I changed his mind about that. So you know, just all how he supported me no matter what and showed me love no matter what. So that's what was going through my head, to be honest.
Speaking of button heads, you know, Sunday, is the 50th anniversary of the legendary Ali Summit in Cleveland. And that photo was so iconic, surrounded by all those influential athletes and activists and community leaders or what have you. But as much as that's a legendary and a part of folklore, it wasn't initially there to support your father. There were many people there trying to convince him to change his anti-Vietnam stance and his draft stance. Ultimately, they ended up getting behind him. What else did he tell you about the Ali Summit?
Him and I never really had a whole lot of conversations about that, but I do know that, you know, when you're the first one to do something and people don't always necessarily understand it, they're not going to support you. And I know that Jim Brown and Kareem, once they really had a conversation with my dad behind closed doors and like gave him those hard questions and he answered him and they really understood like this guy is for real and they saw where he was coming from, then they supported him publicly. But there were a lot of people who didn't, obviously. And there still are people who now, even to this day, didn't love my dad, you know. But I didn't I can't act like I had private conversations with him about that and specifically. I mean, there's so many things that happened along his life, you know, that stand out.
Well, as we all know that your dad went through a lot of racism then. It doesn't necessarily stop, and a lot of it is here present day. And as we were discussing Cleveland, thinking about LeBron James and the comments he just recently made.
Just here in L.A.
Just this happened here in L.A. With his home being vandalized with a racial slur. How did you think that LeBron handled that situation?
I thought he handled it well as far as the statements that he made, because if it was me, I probably would have been, you know, I'm that one that might get a little ignorant sometimes, and I'll come to my senses, but it'll be too late. I'm like, I'll be out there.
Yeah.
But I thought he handled it really well and showed a lot of maturity, because we all know that, you know, there's still racism in this country, and it really doesn't matter how much money you have, how successful you are. There's certain people, if they're racist, they're going to still look at you a certain way and still feel like they're above you and still feel like they need to put you in your place.
Right.
And it happens on a regular basis. And, you know, it happened to LeBron. So a lot of people had the opportunity to see it, but it's not the first time and it won't be the last, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, when it happens to somebody like LeBron, it should crystallize for people. Imagine how people with nothing or who haven't accomplished or achieved certain things are treated. That should be the real takeaway from that.
Let me tell you, my dad, growing up, one of the things that my dad always said, and I didn't understand it until I got older, no matter who was visiting him, it could be a prince from overseas or a president or some dignitary, whatever, they talk about how much they love you. We love you, Muhammad, you're so great. And he'd always say, come here, and he'd get in their ear and say, I'm still a black man. You know, and sometimes he would use other words, but he was always reminding people that no matter what, people still see me this way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that he didn't think less of himself. It's just you have to be realistic about how other people see you. And I didn't understand that until I grew up.
What would your dad think about Colin Kaepernick? Because over the last year, activism has really taken on a different level of conversation. A lot of references to your father, but the focus of it has been Colin Kaepernick's national anthem protest. What would your dad say about how he's handling it and really how the league is handling him?
And obviously, I can't just speak for my dad, but I would think that he would support him because, like me, my father and I both believe you should stand up for what you believe in, especially if it's for the good of all people. And I think that that was definitely what Colin Kaepernick was trying to do. And he did put a lot on the line because obviously he knew, living in the world that we live in, that he was going to face some problems, right, by standing up for what he believed in. And I think we're seeing that now. Arguably, whether he's, getting picked up or not. And I think he kind of slipped a little bit as far as, his game or whatever. I mean, I was asking my husband about that. I was trying to prep,
Curtis Conway.
Curtis Conway. I'm like, man, what's going on with Colin Kaepernick? We might talk about that today.
not the player he used to be in some regards, but still good enough to play.
Yeah, exactly. And he said there's other players who are getting picked up who aren't necessarily as good as him. So when you compare it that way, I don't know, but so I can't really speak on that. But I always supported him in regards to just him standing up for what he believed in.